my name is Rachel and I'm here today to film my wrap up for the month of April. So the last few months I haven't actually been reading that much because I had a writing project on, and in the month of April I moved back from Switzerland to England and like was just seeing people and there was a lot going on. So I've not read a ton, but I have read quite a bit more than I was reading. So yeah, I thought I would just go through them with you today. The first thing that I've been reading, which I just wanted to mention, is this Popshot quarterly magazine because I've been really enjoying it. So this is issue 23, the identity issue. I will say I'm not loving the poetry in this one, but the stories in here are really cool. And I read this one, The Identity Parade by Gillian Walker with illustrations by Matthew Brazier, and it was amazing. It was such a good short story, and there have been some others that I've really enjoyed, but that one really stands out. So I thought I'd just mention that because I'm really enjoying this magazine, and it's definitely one I'd recommend picking up if you want like newer voices, short stories, poetry, flash fiction. It's that sort of stuff. It's very well published. It's quite expensive. It's £6, but it's £6 because it's very well done, and I think it's one of the better like writing magazines that I've had. So would recommend this one. Go for that. I haven't finished it yet. I'm about halfway through it. So next we're going to talk about a book called Run by Kody Keplinger. I didn't really enjoy this book. I gave it 2 stars. So the reason that I picked it up is because I read Just Juliet in February, maybe either February or March, and I loved it. I thought it was amazing. It was like a female couple version of Simon vs. Homo Sapiens Agenda, and it was really sweet and lovely, and I really enjoyed it. Because I had that off Audible, I was looking for like what I wanted with my credit on this particular month, and Run got recommended because I'd read Just Juliet and enjoyed it, and when I looked at it, it sounded like not the same story but a similar kind of like contemporary, 2 girls like discovering sexualities, that sort of thing. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it a try. I don't think it is what it says that it is. I don't think it's what it sells itself to be, which kind of bothers me. It makes it sound like it's going to be a romance between these 2 girls, and that it is not. One of the girls is bisexual, so there is some bisexual rep in there, but it never really goes into her bisexuality, and the girl is straight, but the author kind of keeps you on your toes as to whether she's straight or not, as if they're trying to like hook you along because they know that's like a reason that people read. It's quite common for stories, TV shows, anything like that, to try and keep people's sexualities hidden because they know that, especially with LGBT plus people, we are so starved of representation that we will go for absolute trash. We will slog through season after season of things because we heard in season 6 there's a lesbian romance. There's so little representation that we will do that. And so like I don't like it when people keep it hidden on purpose because they know that they pull more people in if they keep it an unsure thing. So wasn't a fan of that. Another thing that I didn't enjoy is that there's 2 timelines. We have 2 main characters, these 2 girls, and one of their timelines goes from the start to the middle, and the other one's timeline is from the middle to the end, but they both happen at the same time, and it just didn't work. It didn't work at all. I think you're supposed to, like, things get revealed in the later timeline and it's supposed to make things fall into place in the earlier timeline and vice versa, but it didn't work, and the characters weren't very well. Bill and side characters just didn't have character at all. There was a really demonized parental figure who had clearly been through a lot of like addiction problems, having to be a single parent, having to do this and that, and none of the difficulty side of it was shown. It was just shown as though she was really evil, which I didn't love either, and I didn't really like the ending. I don't think it was very satisfying and just wasn't a fan. So I gave it 2 stars. The only reason I gave it 2 stars and I found it redeeming is because one of our main characters is registered blind, and she talks a lot about being blind, and she uses a white stick to get around because although she can see slightly, it's more she can see like a blurred outline of people, and she can't see at all when it's dark. And the book just goes into that in detail a lot, and it goes into her needing to be her own person and have her own agency and be allowed to go out on her own and be able to do these things that her sister was allowed to do growing up, but she's not because her parents are so worried because she's blind, and she's like, just because I'm blind doesn't mean I'm not allowed to like grow up and do things either. That was definitely the best part of the book, her just trying to be in charge of her disability and trying to navigate the people around her and how they thought that she should go about her disability and all of that sort of thing. It was very, very interesting. That's why I gave it 2 stars and not 1, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's not the best. So there was that one. Let's move swiftly on. Okay, so then I have 2 3-star books that I read in the month of April. The first one is The Bling Ring by Nancy Jo Sales. So this is all about, I mean, this is the film cover, so if you've seen this film you probably know, but basically there was a group of teens, it doesn't say what year it is, but I want to say it's around like 2008-ish. Basically this group of teens started robbing celebrity houses, and the celebrities that they were robbing were the kind of celebrities who like teens knew about and they were in magazines and all that sort of stuff. So it's like Lindsay Lohan, Paris Hilton, Rachel Bilson, people like that. Basically it's this group of teens that did that, and she wrote an article called The Suspects Wore Louboutins in 2010's Vanity Fair. Oh, so it must be around 2009, 2010 that these robberies were happening, and it was the basis of Sofia Coppola's The Bling Ring film, and the reason that she got this book deal, basically people wanted her to go more into detail. This is actually a non-fiction account by someone who's a journalist talking about what happened, and she has interviews with the people involved, quite a lot of the suspects she's had interviews with. I gave this book 3 stars. I will say though, complete page turner. I read it in about 3 days, which if you've heard me moan before, you will know I'm shit at reading non-fiction fast. Like non-fiction, even though I enjoy it, it takes me a very long time to get through it. It takes me a long time to get motivated with it because I always think I'm too stupid and I won't get it, which is ridiculous in itself, but I do it anyway. However, this took me like 3 or 4 days. I blazed through it. It was very, very, very readable. However, I think that is also a negative. It's so readable because the way she's wrote it is kind of like a teen drama. She does take it seriously, but at the same time I don't think she brings the right level of like, this is a crime. Because she talks a lot about how a lot of people didn't see this as a crime and were like, oh well, those people have got enough anyway, and like it was like a Robin Hood situation, which obviously like they're still committing crimes, so that's not really what it is. I think one of the things she does really well is that she goes into girls at this time, the way that girls are seen, different studies that are going on at this time. So like she goes into surveys of like, what do people want to be? And so she goes into surveys that were taken in like the 70s, and it'd be a lot of like, I want to be a mother, and then she goes into like the 80s and 90s and people start going to work and it'd be like, I want to be an accountant, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be all these things. And then when you get to the more recent ones, the ones like after 2000s, it's a lot of, I want to be famous, I want to be rich. Talking about young people having surveys done on them, I mean, that stuff she does do well. She goes into a lot of stuff from before and kind of carries it forward to how our society is changing and how it's evolving and that sort of thing. She also goes into a lot of detail about stuff she doesn't need to. So some of the people who were attacked, like Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, she goes a lot into like their specific lives and what they were doing. And I know that she does it because she's trying to say like, that's the lifestyle that these boys and girls that were attacking these houses, that's the lifestyle they wanted. They didn't go and sell all this stuff that they stole. Like they sold some of it, but most of it they kept and they wore it, and it was more about wanting to be those celebrities than it was wanting money. It was a fascinating thing to think about, but then at the same time it was a lot of details on things that didn't need to happen. And like one of the girls who was part of this group had her own like reality show that was being filmed at the time that she was interviewing her, and she talks about that and she talks about her day-to-day life, and she gives her a lot of time. And I don't think she should necessarily get it. It's one of those where it's like, she wants to be famous, she did all this because she wants that lifestyle, and you're kind of giving her that lifestyle by giving her so much page time. We'll say page time. This was good, and I ended up keeping it. This was in my own haul of things that I was going to get rid of, and I didn't get rid of it in the end because I actually did, even though I'm criticising it, and there's a lot to criticise in here. I don't think it's the best thing by far, and I don't know how much I would read another book by Nancy Jo Sales, but it was still very readable and very fascinating to think about. So yeah, I don't know whether I would recommend that people read this or not. I really don't know. It kind of read like Gossip Girl. I mean, I've not read Gossip Girl, I've only seen it, but it kind of read like that, which is just weird because it's a non-fiction about a crime. So yeah, that's that one. I gave that one 3 stars. The next book I picked up was Will Grayson by John Green and David Levithan. So by John Green I've read Paper Towns, Turtles All the Way Down and Fault in Our Stars. And I have a bit of a mixed relationship with him because I really enjoyed Fault in Our Stars. Turtles All the Way Down I really enjoy, like the mental health stuff, but I think the plot is very questionable and not great. And then I really did not enjoy Paper Towns. Paper Towns annoys me with a passion. So I have a bit of a mixed thing with him, and I don't necessarily know if I like him or not as a writer. And then David Levithan, this is my second David Levithan book, and I didn't really love Boy Meets Boy. I thought it was okay, but it was kind of standard. So then we have this book, which I don't know how I feel about. I gave it 3 stars. There were definitely some positives, but there's a hell of a lot of negatives that pissed me off. So I feel like we should talk about them. Will Grayson basically is the story of 2 boys that are called Will Grayson. We follow both of them. They both have their own narrative, and one's written by John Green and one's written by David Levithan. They end up meeting and coming together, and there's a whole cast of characters who I would say are quite well developed in the story actually. And basically we see this like group of people kind of come together and their lives intertwine and the characters meet up and stuff, and it's that kind of thing. It's an LGBT contemporary YA type of book. That with the positives, because there are quite a lot of positives, and I can't say that I didn't like this book because I did enjoy it. So the first thing is, like I said, the characters were very three-dimensional. What I liked is that they were all flawed, very, very flawed at times, but they all strived to be better, and their flaws were very human, and the way they tried to tackle them was very human, and they were never treated as like perfect people, which is quite common in books, and it's something that I don't really enjoy. So the way that characters were crafted in this, I enjoyed. I also thought that the plot was interesting in here. I liked that there was so many different gay people represented in this book. There's a guy in here who is completely the stereotype of like, this is what gay people are like. But then there's another guy who is completely not the stereotype of what gay people are like. And then there's someone else who's like, you know, there's a lot of gay people in it. They're not all the same type of person, which I really love. I also loved that men cried in here. Like, men just cried. Well, I'm saying men, boys, they're still teenagers, but they were crying. And I think it's such a thing where, like, boys aren't allowed to cry. So I liked that people were crying in this, and it was like, yeah, because boys cry, and there's nothing fucking wrong with that. That was great. I also really liked that in the David Levithan chapters, there are no capitals. I don't know why I liked it so much. I just liked it. It worked. It was a good thing. So then we have the things that annoyed me, which I have page numbers. The first one is he literally wrote, I lol. Like, I don't know if you can see this, but like, I'm not okay with people using text speech as though you could just like put it in a book. You can't just put I lol at things. Like, no, that's not proper English. Just because people can text and understand what that means doesn't mean you're allowed to put that in a fully fledged novel. I'm not okay with that. That pissed me off. Then we have the way that dialogue was done. So everything's kind of done in one paragraph, and it bothers me. So there is one paragraph here which is a conversation. So like, Tiny gets a couple of beers and offers me one. I decline. Why, Dwight? I ask. And Tiny says, on his ID he's Dwight David Eisenhower IV. And I say, where the frack did everyone get a fake ID anyway? And then Tiny says, there are places. Like, it's just, and he says, and then I said, and then they said, and then I said. It really, like, it's just not written the best in places, and it really fucking got on my nerves. Like, I can normally, if things aren't written well, I can kind of like glide over it and it'll piss me off, but it won't get to me as much. This book I noticed every single moment, and I was like, why does this keep fucking happening? It's bothering me. Another one that literally pulled me completely out of what I was reading, and I was like, I need to put this book down right now because I can't read another sentence like that. It says, she says askingly, we thought blah 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 blah. I hate that they use the word askingly as a description. Like, no, that's, she says askingly. Just, I don't know why, it just made me furious reading that. It was just so annoying. Another thing that really annoyed me is the way that people who were overweight are discussed in this book. There's a character in this book who's talked about a lot as being quite big, which, yeah, they talk about him as being overweight, but also like, he's hella tall as well. He's just like a very big person, and he's on the football team, and he talks about how like he wants to gain weight because he wants a football scholarship and stuff like that. So like, he's exactly who he wants to be, and he's quite a confident person, so it's like people think it's alright to call him. And honestly, the way that they talk about overweight people just is disgusting in this book. So the first one, I think he'll be all sweaty because let's face it, most fat people get sweaty just from lifting the Twinkie to their mouths. The next one is maybe he hides the phone in the folds of his stomach or something. And then there's another one that says, or maybe she's just jealous of Lizzie, which is funny because Lizzie has acne so bad that it looks like bee stings, but whatever. It's just this, there's a real constant obsession with how people look and their weight and that sort of stuff in this book, and I get it. I get that some teenagers do that, but it's a bad thing. It's not a good thing. So to put it in books that teenagers read is just going to make... Actually, I don't think teenagers are stupid enough to do it just because they read it in books, but it can't help if you're just like adding to the problem. Like, you should try and remove that. I don't know, that just, it's very, there's so much judgment in this book that it just wound me up. It really, really, really fucked me off. Overall, 3 stars. There were things I enjoyed about this book, but there were the things that I hated about this book really outweighed the positives, and I think I will just remember this book as being very mediocre. The next books I'm going to mention, I gave all of them 4 stars. One of them I actually think maybe I should have given 4.5 stars looking back because it's really stuck with me, but we can talk about that after. So the first one is Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig. If you have watched my unhaul, you will know this was supposed to go, that I was halfway through reading it when I was filming that unhaul, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to get rid of it at the end because I don't think I'll read it again. But no, ended up keeping it. Really enjoyed it. Matt Haig basically talks about anxiety and depression, his time dealing with those, and the kind of things that helped him. He talks about a lot of things that helped him and the things that hindered him also, and it's a very easy book to read. I think that's one of the best things about it, is that I can imagine if I wasn't feeling very well mental health wise, this will be a good book to read because it's so readable. Well, he says that he does want to read when he is sad. I don't want to read when I'm sad. It makes me not want to do anything. I just want to lie there and just not be doing anything. But I imagine that it will be a lot easier to read something like this. So what I loved is that I just thought it had really amazing insight into what it's like to have anxiety and depression. I wouldn't necessarily say I've had anxiety or depression. I don't think you can really say you have unless you've been diagnosed, because it's a very tricky thing to walk the line with. But I think there's definitely episodes and times that I've had, and it was really nice at one point. So about a year and a half ago, I got really, really sad and I couldn't leave my room, and it was horrendous. This has never happened to me before. It's not happened to me since. I really fucking hope it never happens again. It was literally just one of the worst things I've ever experienced. I basically couldn't leave my room, and I kept wanting to leave the room. I kept putting my shoes on, and then I'd take my shoes off again. I'd put my coat on, take my coat off again. I'd sit on the floor and cry, and then I'd try to leave the room, and I couldn't leave the room, and it was this cycle, and it went on for about 2 hours where I just kept trying to leave the room, and I couldn't. I don't know why. There was a lot going on. But I've never really heard people talk about that before, and he talks about a similar thing. He talks about how when you are depressed, your circle of space that you're comfortable with just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and it gets to the point where like he can't walk to the corner shop on his own because his circle of like I'm comfortable in space is so small that he finds it hard to leave. And it was really nice just reading someone talking about something where like I was like, oh, that's like I've never heard someone actually put into words what that was before. So that was really nice. And he gives some really practical tips. It's not trying to push anything on you. It's not trying to be like, you should do this. This will make you happy. Blah, 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 blah. It's not trying to do that. It's just being like, it's really shitty when you're sad. This is what it was like for me. You're not alone because, you know, I feel it. You feel it. This is how other people have said they feel about it as well. It's really crappy, and maybe if you want to like try and help yourself, here's some things you can do, but don't feel like you have to do them because, you know, everyone's different. Like, it's very open. It's a good book to read. I would really recommend this one for people who are actually feeling sad. Like, it'd be great for people who like want to know more about mental health problems as well, especially if you can't imagine what it's like. But I think it's really good for if you've like being in that space, especially if you don't know how to describe it, because I really think it helped me in that way. So yeah, would highly recommend this one, even though it's just like a small one. It really helped. And he has another book that I've seen, I think it's called like Notes on a Planet or something like that, and it looks like this but it's blue, and I definitely want to pick that one up. So then the second to last book that I want to talk about is Finding? What was I going to say this was called? I have no idea. It wasn't right. Follow Me In by Katrina Chapman. this is a graphic novel that I read when I got home. So I think I mentioned like I've really missed graphic novels while I've been in Switzerland, because I did buy a few when I was there because I missed them so much, but I could never buy a lot because they're so expensive, and like as you can see with this, it's fucking heavy and hardback and huge, so you really can't bring that many of them home. And so I had this one. I bought a lot of graphic novels with my Christmas money because I wanted to be able to actually read the books that I got for Christmas before I went back to Switzerland, but this is one of the ones that I didn't get time to read. And so yeah, I picked it up when I got home, and I'm so glad that I did. This is wonderful. This is exactly the kind of graphic novel that I love. This is a graphic memoir of Katrina Chapman's time when she went to Mexico. So she goes to Mexico, she went with one of her ex-boyfriends, and it's the story of her, like what it was like when they were in Mexico, her discovering drawing again and actually seeing drawing as something that she can invest time in and maybe make a career out of, instead of just something that was a hobby that she used to like doing when she was a kid. It's about her relationship and realizing that you don't have to stay with someone just because you feel responsible for them. So her boyfriend at the time was an alcoholic, and she kind of put up with a lot of the stuff that he was doing and all that sort of stuff, and she basically goes on this journey through the book where she realizes like, I don't have to be the person who supports someone if they're not going to try and help themselves. I'm not a bad person for being like, okay, well if you don't want to help yourself, I need to check out of this situation. You're not a bad person for doing that. And it's just fantastic. So the artwork in here is beautiful. Oh, and I got this little thing so I got it from Travelling Man in Manchester, which if you're ever in Manchester is an amazing comic book shop. They always put these little like inserts and stuff in there, so I had that one too, so I bookmark. So the art style in here is very much like this, which is quite pretty. So we have moments like this where she goes into like the geography of the place. There'll be pages like this where, because she started getting back into drawing again and finding her love of drawing, she had this book with her that she was drawing in, and so we've got these like little things from the journal that she was keeping, which are great. You've also got like just little tips on like day trips to take if you ever go to Mexico. So she has also these huge pages that are all about like the history of the places she's visiting in Mexico as well. I love graphic memoirs. I love especially people talking about travel in memoirs as well. I haven't read that many of them, I just know from what I've read that I love them. So if you have any recommendations of more graphic novels like this, please let me know down below, because there's something that I really enjoy, but there's something that I feel isn't that easy to find. This was fantastic. I gave this one 4 stars. And then the last book that I want to talk about is actually the first book that I finished this month, and it's the book that I gave 4 stars, but it stayed with me so much, and I really think maybe it's 4.5 stars, but it is Almost Love by Louise O'Neill. This is the second book by Louise O'Neill that I've read. I've also read Asking for It by Louise O'Neill, which I read in December and adored. I love the way with Louise O'Neill that she talks about feminine issues, sexuality. Almost Love focuses on a girl called Sarah, and Sarah is in a relationship with someone. She is quite unhappy. She's very unlikable, which I loved. I loved that she is such an unlikable narrator, because women can be unlikable and you can still like engage in their stories. It's this harrowing story that's going on, but she doesn't try and be like, oh, I'm going to tell you a harrowing story but make the narrator likable so it seems even more harrowing. She doesn't do that, which I love. It's about her relationships, her current relationship, an older relationship that she was in that was quite abusive in a way that is, I don't know how to describe it. This is the kind of thing. This is the kind of thing that people should be able to describe, and we just don't have words for it because people do not talk about it. It's that kind of emotional abuse where somebody basically just treats you like complete and utter shit, but you kind of let them and you have this draw to them anyway. And there's this thing sometimes where someone treats you badly and it draws you even more in because you want them to like you, so you let them treat you like crap. I don't know how to describe it, but it's a thing. It's a universal thing that I think a lot of people know what it is, and just it's very difficult to put into words, and Louise O'Neill has done it so perfectly in this book. Like I said, I did listen to this on audiobook, which I think was great because number one, you had the accent all the way through it, so I was very like, this is Irish, which I didn't have with asking for it. There were occasions in that book where I was like, oh yeah, it's Irish, because they'll say the certain things, but I didn't all the time feel like it was Irish because I was reading it, and obviously I'm going to read it with my accent in my head, which is English. So it was really nice reading it and having constantly an Irish accent to remind me that this is an Irish story. That was really nice. And I also liked that because there's some very difficult names in there, which I watched an interview with her and she said that she did on purpose because she's trying to embody a certain class of people in Ireland, and so she looked for names of people in that class. But those names at times, like, I know if I'd have been reading it, I would have been stuck reading the names over and over again because I would have been like, how do you even pronounce that? And I would have kept going back to it. So I was glad that I didn't have to worry about that. Like, it was just pronounced for me. So I didn't even think about it at the time really, but I know now that it would have really bothered me. One thing that I really liked is that Louise O'Neill has a background in YA. The things she's wrote before have been YA books. And with YA books, there's usually this focus on the internal and the mindset and like what people are thinking and blah 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 blah. And I think that style lent itself so well to this book because this is her first adult book, but this style of writing it just went so well with the fact that this book has such an internal focus on Sarah's mental situation and how things are going on. Just that those two things really went together well, and I was really impressed by that. I also loved that she kept attacking her friends. So like something bad would happen and she would turn around and attack all the people around her, which I think everyone has done. Like, I've been in that situation where I've fucked up or I'm arguing with someone or like something's going on and someone else will talk to me who is completely innocent, but you just attack them because you're just like, just stop fucking talking to me because I'm so mad right now and you're talking to me and it's just making me even more mad, even though it's nothing to do with them. Louise O'Neill really embodies that really well in that she shows you that these people haven't done anything wrong, but she keeps attacking them because her mental state is just in a situation where it just keeps lunging out and attacking everyone around her and she can't help herself. I just really loved it. I loved the way that she focuses on women's sexuality, on women's pleasure, how like women's pleasure is often secondary to men's pleasure in a lot of, not necessarily in real life, but just in a lot of things like films, porn, things like that. And because of that, it kind of filters through to actual relationships. I just think Louise O'Neill is one of the best authors. She really is bringing things that haven't been talked about before. I think I mentioned this when I talked about reading her other book, Asking for It, where she talks about like someone says yes to having sex with someone, but she was underage and on drugs. So can you really say that she said yes? And the thing of like putting things on the internet and revenge porn and that sort of, she goes into all of that. And these are things that I think people are so scared to go near and so scared to talk about. And I really like with Louise O'Neill's books that she is talking about the real things that happen in today that are just so important and so integral and everyone's just running away from because it's really awkward to talk about. Louise O'Neill is becoming one of my favourite authors of all time and I've only read 2 of her books. I just think she is wonderful. I need to stop because I will keep fangirling about Louise O'Neill for hours, so I'm going to make myself stop. There are all the things that I read in the month of April. These ones and some audiobooks. This one is quite a successful month. I read some books I really didn't like, but I also read some books that I liked so much that would stay with me. So that's great. Definitely going to be buying a copy of Almost Love at some point because I liked it that much. So I would say, yeah, overall a pretty good reading month. Thank you very much for watching. If you've read any of these books and have differing opinions to me, same opinions to me, anything like that, comment down below and let me know, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!